Senator Creighton, you and I have stood on this Senate floor many days and nights going back and forth about school finance and DEI and all sorts of other things. And of late, our conversation back and forth has been on the school finance and my quest for getting our drivers, our bus drivers, our custodial staff, and our food service staff in our school, in all our school systems, some support. So I stand here this evening, this late hour, to commend you on the work you've done and this amendment number 1 on HB2. But as I stand here, I've got a couple of questions just for clarity to help not just my colleagues and I understand, but to help all of our Texans understand how this is going to work. So if you'll bear with me for about 3 or 4 questions, I'd appreciate it.
Of course.
Senator Creighton, in your hard work, you've designed an allotment, which is a mechanism that will allow this body, this legislature, to demonstrate our support for our staff, that we value and appreciate all the work they put in each and every day. Speaking of our auxiliary staff, particularly our bus drivers, our custodians, and our cooks. So explain to me how this will work. This is an allotment, and if it's correct, my understanding is correct, it's a creation of a pool of money, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that will allow our support staff to be given raises through that pool of money, is that correct?
That's right.
And the allotment is it dispersed? Is it going to be dispersed, or is it something they got to apply for? Or will our support staff automatically be given a raise? Or is it a process they have to go through? Can you help me to navigate through that?
First of all, Senator Miles, I want to say thank you for your advocacy that ended up resulting in this allotment being created and working with my office and just continuing to be a strong voice for all that are represented and who will benefit from this allotment. I appreciate that working relationship and your mention of those days on the floor that I've always enjoyed our exchanges, and you,
likewise.
Iron sharpens iron, right? This allotment is $500 million. It's $500 million invested in the bill. It's represented through $45 a student, so per student, that will go to the districts that are already reporting on the number of employees that they have and how each of those employees are coded into a system, and that allotment will be directed based on the strict nature of how this bill, this allotment itself, it doesn't travel for upper level administration, it travels for exactly those employees, full-time and part-time, that I mentioned in the amendment layout. And so that's how it would work. It would work just the same as how compensation and allotments travel today.
So you just brought on a couple other questions. You said $45 per student, correct?
That's right.
Let me go a little further. So with the new HB2, you know, it's often said how little Texas spends per student, per dollar per student in the state of Texas. With HB2, let me advance you a little further. With HB2, how much roughly are we spending per student overall now? Overall, how much is the state of Texas spending per student per dollar per student now, roughly? If my calculations, what we've been talking about amongst our colleagues group is right, is it somewhere roughly north of 17,000, is that correct, per student?
Yes, when you take nearly $100 billion and you extrapolate that across 5.4 plus million students, you end up north of $17,700. Now, this bill represents an additional $566 per student. So yes, it's a significant investment in our schools on a, if you want to break it down to a per student basis, it's historic.
So we're probably no longer in the bottom half of the country with this significant increase now, right? Wouldn't you say? We should probably be in the top 25% of the country now, if not the top 10%.
On per student funding?
Yes, sir.
Well, we're going to reach different milestones on student funding, per student funding, and on teacher pay averages. Of course, we're towards the top of the nation on starting teacher salaries.
Can you say that again? Would you say that again and say it loud?
We're towards the top of the nation ranking on starting teacher salaries now. When we move forward with this bill, it will even increase further the amount of dollars that we're committed to each individual student total, which is between $12,500 and $16,000 a student on average across the state of Texas. And to look at it as far as members, the total amount of funding we're putting into public education, 10 years ago, we were at $44 billion. 10 years later, in 2025, we will be at just over $96 billion with only 100,000 more students in that 10 years. So, Senator Miles, across the board, the funding that we're putting into public schools has been tremendous.
And that's something to be proud of and to be congratulated. But let me digress and go back to how this allotment is going to work. And I heard you explain it, but you know, I've always got to ask you to break it down and kind of explain it so the people back home can get an understanding, because it's for them. We understand it here in our body, but it's for them. So I kind of want them to understand back home. So help me break this down, Senator Creighton. Would it be up to the discretion of the superintendent or the administrators of the school district to administer the money to our auxiliary staff? And I heard you say it, break it down technically, but can we break it down so they'll understand back home? Can you do that for me? You think?
Yes, in our exchange, we talked about how this $500 million investment for our auxiliary staff, for those that are not teaching in the classroom, but as you mentioned, our bus.
And let's verify something.
Yeah.
That's going to include our part-time employees, as Senator Mendez explained.
You're doing a great job making sure intent is clear in the record. It's our full-time, it's our part-time employees, our bus drivers, our custodians, our counselors, those that day in and day out make, the secretarial staff, those that day in and day out make the school run efficiently.
Now, how's it work for them?
So it would travel to the districts through the money man, right, or woman, the CFO, in the form of a $45 allotment per student in that school, and that would be converted into additional compensation for those employees.
Okay, and closing down here, how can we guarantee that our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, and our custodians will be getting these raises after the allotment is created? And Senator Creighton, is there a mechanism or any type of revision in this bill that's going to guarantee the raises for those particular staffers?
Yes, Senator Miles, as I mentioned prior, this allotment specifically prescribes, it's very prescriptive on exactly who is covered by these additional monies.
And
how do we guarantee?
Yeah.
For the school districts.
How are we going to guarantee it?
For the school districts to be following the law correctly, they would follow the directions laid out in this allotment for how this $500 million would be spent. And it's even so clear that it makes sure that upper level administration, that it's clear that they are not included in the disbursement of these monies. And so for our food service staff, our custodians, bus drivers, administrative assistants, and other support staff that are mentioned, part-time and full-time, they are the recipient of this allotment.
You know, Senator Creighton, I want to thank you again. I think it's paramount for me, and I believe it's paramount for you and all of our colleagues that worked and contributed to this, that our bus drivers, our custodial staff, and our food service, and our administrative assistant and other support staff, that makes our lives and our children's lives in school easier, you know, from cities like El Paso to Dallas and from Brenham to Houston. I think this is going to be a monumental, a paramount bill, and like you said earlier in your opening, this is going to be historical and is going to change the way that education is viewed and financed in the great state of Texas. This has been great. The work has been done, but I think this allotment is just a start. We've got a lot more work to do on this and just to keep it steady. And again, Senator Creighton, I just want to thank you. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for, as you say, I'm listening. As you always say, I'm listening. And colleagues, you know, we've got to thank ourselves for being patient with Senator Creighton. We've all been patient to see this day come and been patient for the last couple of days. But job well done, yeoman's work, and this is something that we can all go home, I think, and tell our colleagues that we have changed the face of educational finance in the state of Texas. Job well done, sir.
Thank you, Senator Miles.